My husband suddenly starts ranting about how he refuses to be the breadwinner for a housewife, spouting things that make no sense. Before I know it, he's packing up my belongings. "What are you doing?" I ask, bewildered. "I'm asking you to leave this house until you realize what you've done," he replies coldly. "What?" I can barely process his words. My name is Mary, a 27-year-old office worker. I recently landed my dream job at a cosmetics company and threw myself into my work with enthusiasm. My dedication paid off. I received excellent feedback from my boss and earned a promotion. For someone my age, my salary is pretty impressive. I've been married to my husband Tom for a year. We're the same age, but he earns less than I do. It doesn't bother me, but I've come to realize that it's a sensitive issue for him. Tom never brings it up directly, but whenever our conversations drift towards work, he quickly changes the subject. I think it reminds him that his salary is lower than mine. He often seems unmotivated about his job, saying, "I don't have a great job, so I've learned to avoid talking about my work too much at home." Despite this, Tom does his share of the housework and is great at cooking and cleaning. He has a gentle nature and we communicate well, so I've always felt that we're a strong couple. But now I'm beginning to wonder if I was the only one who felt that way. One day I wasn't feeling well and experienced severe nausea. Concerned, I went to the hospital and found out I was pregnant. Excited, I immediately shared the news with my husband. He was overjoyed, and seeing his happiness made me even more thrilled. I thought to myself, we're going to build a loving, warm family. Decided to take maternity leave about 6 weeks before my due date, wanting to give myself time to rest since it was my first pregnancy. However, around that time, I noticed a subtle change in my husband's attitude. When he came home one evening, I greeted him with a smile. "Welcome home." He looked at me lounging on the sofa and remarked, relaxing on the sofa again, "Huh, you've got it easy." His tone surprised me. At first, I brushed it off, assuming he was just stressed from work. But as the days passed, his attitude toward me grew colder and more distant. "Hey, where's my dinner?" "Sorry, I'm not feeling well today, so I picked up some pre-made food from the supermarket." "What? You've got to be kidding me. After a long day at work, you're serving me supermarket pre-made food." His sudden outburst caught me off guard, and I was too exhausted to argue. Some days I felt so sick that I could barely do anything. Even the smell of food made me nauseous. On one of those days, I sent my husband a message explaining how I was feeling and asked if he could either cook for himself or grab something to eat. He didn't respond, but I saw that he'd read the message, so I assumed everything was fine. I crawled into bed and fell asleep for a few hours. When I woke up, it was midnight. I got up to go to the bathroom and noticed the light was on in the living room, with voices drifting from inside. Curious, I walked in and was surprised to find that my husband had brought some of his colleagues home with him. "Oh, look, the selfish princess has finally woken up," one of his colleagues said with a smirk. Another added, "Sorry to disturb you." I greeted them politely, but I was shocked. I quickly pulled my husband aside into the hallway. "What's going on? Why would you bring people over this late?" He shrugged. "What's the big deal? We went out for drinks, and when that wasn't enough, I invited them back here." "You know I'm pregnant, right?" I said, trying to keep my frustration in check. "So what? I'm not asking you to do anything risky. But could you please consider the impact this is having on my mental health?" "What? You're overreacting. If you had cooked dinner, I wouldn't have needed to go out for drinks with them, so you're the one responsible for me bringing them home." His reasoning made no sense to me. If you have so much energy, why don't you make something to eat and serve it to everyone? "I can't, I'm still feeling sick." "You're just being selfish. You're ruining the fun for everyone. Go back to your bedroom and get some rest." With that, he turned and went back into the living room. I couldn't take it anymore. Frustrated, I decided to move back to my parents' house. I explained the situation to my obstetrician and asked if I could give birth near them. Fortunately, She knew an obstetrician close to my parents' place and promptly provided me with a letter of introduction. I left a note on the table saying, "I'm going home for a while to give birth." My husband immediately started calling and messaging, but I chose to ignore him. About a week later, I received a message from him saying, "I'm sorry. You can stay at your parents' house and rest before the birth." Although I still hadn't forgiven him, I was relieved to hear his apology. I stayed at my parents' house and it made a huge difference. I felt much better. My nausea subsided and my appetite returned. After that, I gave birth to a healthy baby girl. My parents were thrilled to welcome their granddaughter, and my husband came to the hospital as well. He was overjoyed to hold our daughter, exclaiming, "She's so cute," and showed genuine concern for my health. I felt relieved, thinking that he had returned to his caring and gentle self. Once I recovered, I spent about 2 weeks at my parents' house before moving back to the home I shared with my husband. When I returned, he eagerly took on the task of feeding our daughter after work. Initially, he was very involved, helping with diaper changes and bath times. His enthusiasm and support were incredibly encouraging. I felt relieved, believing that my husband and I would be able to live together harmoniously once more. However, about 2 months after our daughter was born, his attitude began to shift again. It seemed to be related to our baby's increased nighttime crying. Until then, she had been sleeping soundly, but now her cries were frequent and disruptive, waking us up regularly throughout the night. The lack of sleep began to take a toll on my husband, who became increasingly stressed and less supportive with childcare. He even said, "I'll sleep on the couch," and left me to handle everything on my own. Additionally, he started coming home late from work, which only deepened my mistrust and concern about our relationship. Once I saw him acting this way, I began to notice many other things about him. I started expressing my frustration about his lack of involvement in raising our child. My husband appeared increasingly stressed, and one day he made a startling comment. "Who do you think is providing for you?" "What?" I asked, confused. "It's because of me that you're able to stay home and live comfortably. You should show more respect for your husband." I was taken aback. "I appreciate that you were supportive in the beginning, but lately, when our daughter cries, you just brush it off and say, 'Hey, she's crying,' without offering any help." "No, that's not what I'm talking about," he snapped. "What do you mean by silly?" I asked, puzzled. "I'm the boss in this house and you're showing me disrespect." "I don't understand what you're referring to," I said, genuinely confused. "I'm the one who earns the money, so you need to show me more respect." He then began to say things that didn't make sense, like, "I'm not going to be the breadwinner for a housewife." Without warning, he started packing up my belongings. "What are you doing?" I asked, bewildered. "I'm asking you to leave this house until you regret what you've done," he said as he hastily stuffed my clothes into a bag and tried to force me out. "Fine, I'll go. Just let me pack my things myself," I responded, starting to fold my clothes and place them in my bag. Once I was done packing, I picked up my daughter and saw him throw my box out the front door. "Come back when you've had time to reflect on your actions," he said, and then he locked the front door behind him. Left with no other option, I returned to my parents' house. After leaving my daughter in my mother's care, I went to the city office to pick up the divorce papers. The next day, I went back to my husband's house and rang the doorbell. "Oh, you're back already? I suppose you've realized you can't manage without me. All I need is for you to show me you're sorry. If you get down on your knees, I might forgive you," my husband said with a smirk. Ignoring his demands, I pulled the divorce papers from my bag and handed them to him. "What? Divorce papers? Why? I thought you were sorry," he exclaimed, confused. "After everything you've said and done, I have nothing to apologize for. I haven't done anything wrong. I can't stay married to you any longer," I replied firmly. My husband was clearly taken aback, not expecting me to follow through with the divorce. He then said something that made little sense. But you're okay with this. It's going to be tough for you as a single mother. You don't even have a job. How will you support your daughter? What are you talking about? I didn't lose my job, I replied. What? You've been home all this time. I thought you quit because you got pregnant. Oh, so that's what you've assumed. Who said I quit my job? I'm just on maternity and childcare leave. What? It seemed my husband believed that women automatically quit their jobs after giving birth. Oh no, I thought you had become a stay-at-home wife, he said, realizing his misunderstanding. Oh, I see. So you thought you could one-up me, I said. My husband's face went pale with shock. It was clear he was deeply hurt. He had always been proud, and when we were both working, my higher income seemed to bother him. I guess he just assumed I had quit my job rather than being on leave. I was thoroughly disgusted by his behavior. Husbands and wives should be equal, I told him. I'm exhausted from dealing with your inferiority complex. And never cared about who made more money. Realizing the gravity of his actions, my husband broke down in tears and pleaded, I'm sorry. Please don't divorce me. But by then it was too late. I asked him to sign the divorce papers and left the house. We later finalized the divorce through our lawyers. I had recorded my ex-husband's verbal abuse as a precaution, so I was able to use it as evidence to secure alimony for the harassment I endured. Without my income, he couldn't afford the rent on our apartment, so he had to move to a cheaper place. Interestingly, when he brought his colleagues over that night, they had no idea I was pregnant. When they saw my belly, they were all taken aback. After our divorce, rumors spread at his workplace that he'd been dumped by his wife. My ex-husband must be feeling a lot of shame now, and he totally deserves it. Meanwhile, I took maternity leave and returned to work, now living at my parents' house. They've been incredibly supportive as I balance work and raising my child. Although my marriage didn't work out, I'm happier than ever thanks to the fulfilling work I love and the joy on my daughter's face. I'm committed to my career and excited to watch my daughter grow up. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.